Hi, thanks for joining us for GSC Live 2022 from Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm pleased to be joined by Dr. Rick Bransford, who is the new chair-elect of the AO Spine International Education Commission. Rick, thank you for joining me. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So I'm based at the University of Washington, work at Harvard Medical Center, have been there for better part of 20 years now, did much of my training there. My background's a little unique. I actually grew up in Kenya in East Africa. My father was a surgeon, so I grew up in the operating room starting at age 6. I've lived in Europe for a couple years. I did some of my training in Australia. So I think I come with a relatively global background, and a lot of my interests are global as well. So I am currently the chair of AO Spine North America Education, and was very excited to recently be voted in and excited about what this role will entail.
Well, first, congratulations on being elected. I think people need to understand. A lot of people ask me, how do you move up in AO Spine? And it's really a democratic process. There's voting, make sure we get the vast majority, and congratulations on winning.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's start off with the meeting. What are your thoughts on the meeting? For me, it's kind of great to see people face to face again. We're certainly building back up to where we were before the pandemic. But for me, it's just, I feel like we're still catching up. Do you feel like we're back to where we were? Are we still catching up? Do you feel like there's an aversion to do meetings because of the pandemic? Just give me your thoughts on that.
No, I think that I'm a huge fan of the Global Spine Congress. I've been to every single one since the initiation, with the exception of Dubai. It's great to have the international collaboration, and I think that we're definitely making steps forward. We definitely aren't there yet. You know, it's a real shame to have our Asia-Pacific compatriots not here in person, or largely not here in person. But I think the momentum's building. I think that we've lost a lot of our momentum with a lot of our projects, with a lot of what AO is doing, because as much as we can do via Zoom and remotely, it's not the same as meeting across a table, having dinner together, and the amount of steps in the right direction is infinitely greater at a meeting like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely. So, as the incoming chair of education, what are some of the things you're thinking about? And I know it's a tough question. You just got elected. And I'm not saying that you have planned this out, and I don't want to hold your feet to the fire saying that you're going to do this, but just your initial thoughts. What do you want to accomplish? What are going to be your goals when you take over?
I think one of my big goals is that AO has grown, and it's grown because it does such an amazing job. But there's a lot of different moving parts, and I don't want to use the word silo, but I think a lot of those parts don't always know what the others are doing. And when you look at the knowledge forums, you look at the expert groups, you look at education, you look at research, you look at fellowship and community development, I think there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate. And so I guess if I were to have one theme that I would have moving forward, it would be to collaborate. Is that with education, can we collaborate better with research? Can we collaborate better with the expert groups and the TC? And then can we collaborate better with regions? It always troubles me when I see that we are trying to create something here in North America that maybe Latin America has perfected. And so the more we can share our ideas, share our initiatives, and work collaboratively, that will hopefully push us to be a better organization, and hopefully, with respect to education, be better.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a great perspective on things. So with the pandemic, you've got a tough job, because it's not just about, at least in my view, and I'd love your opinions on this, it's not just about getting back to normal the way it was. We've learned a lot. We've learned about hybrid meetings, virtual meetings. So I think the challenge for you taking over education is, what is education going to look like just mechanically? Is it going to be face-to-face? Is hybrid here to stay? Are we going to go all the way back and abandon hybrid once this pandemic settles down? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's two components to that. I think that the younger learners today learn differently than those of us that are older. And so I think their expectations and their viewpoints are different than what we have, and I think we have to bear that in mind. You know, one of the new words that came to me recently was Altmetrics, and I didn't know what that was. And
All right, tell me what that is. I'm just showing my age. I don't know what that is.
Well, I only learned recently, you know, I look at PubMed, and that's where I go to do my research studies, and I go to the Global Spine Journal, and, you know, I can do search words. But Altmetrics, you know, people look at Doximity, they're looking at Instagram, they're looking at Twitter, and that's how many of the younger learners are passing on their learning, their education, sharing ideas. And something we're actually looking at. And so I think, you know, going back to your question, we've learned that we can do a lot via remote, via Zoom, via asynchronous online stuff. And I think that that's here to stay. And I think that that is actually a step forward in some respects. We still can't abandon our face-to-face discussions, our face-to-face cadaveric courses and stuff like that, that there's still going to be a role for in-person. But I think we're going to see a lot more blended meetings, and probably much of what we used to do historically face-to-face, we're going to be doing more with people doing it from their living room or in that sort of capacity.
Yeah. So some of the things we adopted during the pandemic are just going to be here to stay. There's part of our future educational events.
I think so, and I think that maybe for those of us that are older that are more used to the face-to-face, in some ways that's sort of sad, but I think it's also, it will allow us to do more, to reach a broader audience. It will save costs substantially, and that'll allow us to put our costs elsewhere. So I think if we can still educate, if we can still communicate with people effectively without face-to-face, I think we should latch onto that and take advantage of that. But I think we can't rely solely on that. That is not going to work.
Sure, sure. So I was told that you are running a complications course in Davos. Is that correct?
That's correct. You know, one of the issues with Davos is always trying to remain new, and so there's a lot of industry courses. There's a lot of other courses out there that we're competing with. If we can do a complications course, and what's different about this is that everything is going to be case-based. It's going to be real-life cases, but many of these were actually led to legal issues, led to settlements. And so we're actually going to have a lawyer who's going to join us from North America. And so he's going to help us process these things from a legal standpoint, but also talked about documentation and how they view that from a legal side, how to deal with psychological stress when you're going through litigation, how to document more effectively, do depositions, those sorts of issues as well. So hopefully a unique twist on that.
That's fantastic, because that's the part that we don't learn in training. You know, I used to think that the two major deficits in our training programs are, number one, the financial aspects of setting up a practice for when you're done with your training, and number two is leadership skills. I think talking with you today, I've just added a third. A third is everything what you just said, how to deal with those issues, the mental stress and the legal aspects and things like that. I think that's fantastic.
I think we're very excited about it. We've done a couple of these in North America. So the lawyer who we're bringing is actually familiar with this. He's he works for a university in the U.S. He's been doing this for 25, 30 years. So he is used to defending doctors, defending medical centers, but also a very personable, down-to-earth guy. And so he's somebody that everybody can relate to as well.
Fantastic. So we'll end with a plug for your course in Davos. When is it going to take place?
It's the first week of December 5th through 7th. So if you can, put that on your calendar, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed.
It sounds great. Well, listen, I want to thank you, Rick, for taking the time sitting down with us. I want to thank the audience for listening to GSC Live 2022, and we look forward to the next tune-in. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Jeff.